Here's the vocabulary for Lesson 5.4. Our first vocabulary word is conversion factor, and that is a rate in which two quantities are equal but use different units. So my example is 1 hour over 60 minutes, or you could have 60 minutes over 1 hour. So these ratios have different units, hours and minutes, but they're equivalent to each other. We can have hour in the numerator and minutes in the denominator, or we can flip it around and have minutes in the numerator and hours in the denominator. Dimensional analysis is the process of including units of measurement as factors when you compute. So in the example, I have 100 miles over 1 hour. Well, we can use dimensional analysis to convert this. We want to make sure that our units cross-cancel. So in this example, our hours cross-cancel, and we are converting 100 miles in 60 minutes, which is the same thing as going 100 miles in 1 hour. So we're changing hours to minutes. Notes 5.4 on converting rates. The objective is to convert rates using dimensional analysis and convert between systems of measurements. The Common Core state standards are listed in the mathematical practices. Dimensional analysis. Convert each rate using dimensional analysis. Round to the nearest hundredth. That's 2 places after the decimal, if necessary. We have 100 miles per hour, and we want to change it to miles per minute. So we want to look at our units of measurement. We have miles to miles, so that doesn't change. But then we have hours to minutes. So that means that we want to figure out how many miles per hour it would be if we were converting it to miles per minute. So we want to convert hours to minutes. So 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. So in the box over here, we have a little watch out. Make sure that we don't do it. It says make sure that you choose conversion factors that allow you to divide out common units. So we want to make sure that we're converting, in this case, between hours and minutes, and we want to make sure that we can divide out those common units. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set up the original 100 miles over 1 hour. And we want to multiply it by the conversion factor. All right, since we're converting hours to minutes, we want to make sure that we cancel out our hours, and since it's in the denominator, it needs to go to the numerator, and we want to put minutes in your denominator. Now add in your numbers. 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. You can use a calculator to solve these problems. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are crossing out our units of measurement. So our hours cancels out and we're left with miles over minutes, which we want to end up with miles over minutes. Multiply going across, you get 100 miles over 60 minutes. But we don't want to figure out how many miles we went in 60 minutes. We want to figure out how many miles we went in 1 minute. So we're going to find a unit rate. We need to divide the numerator and the denominator by 60. When we divide the numerator and denominator by 60, we actually get 1.6666 repeating. But the directions say round to the nearest hundredth. Hundredths is 2 places after your decimal. So that 6 in the thousandths place is greater than 5, so we're going to add a 1 to the 6. So it's 1.67 miles per 1 minute. So 100 miles per hour is equal to 1 and 67/100 miles in 1 minute. Number 2, 15 miles per hour, and we want to convert it to yards per second. Look at your units. I'm going to start by writing my original. 15 miles over 1 hour. But looking at my end result, I need to go from yards to seconds. So that means I got to convert 2 things. I got to convert miles to yards. 1 mile is equal to 1,760 yards. And we also need to do hours to seconds. So 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. So those are the 2 conversion factors that we are going to use. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to multiply to one of the conversion factors, either miles to yards or hours per second. We'll just start with miles and yards. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we can cross cancel our miles out because we want to change them to yards. Now put in your numbers. 1,760 yards is 1 mile. Now we do our second conversion factor, and we want to go from hours to seconds. So our hour goes in our numerator, the seconds goes in our denominator. Now 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. Double check to make sure that your units of measurements cancel out. So miles cancels out with miles in the denominator, hours in the denominators cancels out with hours in the numerator, so you're left with yards over seconds. Now using your calculator, multiply your numerators together. 15 times 1,760 times 1 to give you 26,400. Put in your units, that would be yards, over, multiply on the bottom, 1 times 3,600. Put in your label, seconds. Now, on this problem over here, you could change the order around, and you'd still get the same answer, because multiplication is commutative. We could convert your hours to seconds and yards to miles and change the order, so that's fine. So now we need to find out what the unit rate is. So we divide the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. So we're going to divide by 3,600. So we're going to divide the numerator and denominator by 3,600. We'll put our work below. When we divide the denominator by itself, we get 1. So there's our 1 second. When we divide the 26,400 by the 3,600, we get 6.83 repeating. So we need to round that to the nearest hundredth, so that would give us 6.83, and put in your label yards.
So 15 miles per hour is equal to 6 83/100 yards per second.
All right, number 3 says a community swimming pool fills at a rate of 70 gallons per minute. We want to figure out how many gallons per hour that is. Our gallons stay the same. They're not changing because it was gallons to gallons. It's our time that's changing. We want to go from minutes to hours. So our conversion factor is 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. So start by writing your original, 70 gallons, and we can use abbreviations, over 1 minute. And we want to multiply by the conversion factor, and we want to cancel out your minutes, so that's going to go in your numerator, and hours is going to go in your denominator. So 60 minutes is equal to 1 hour. Now multiply going across, so we end up getting 4,200, and then our units would be gallons because we're canceling out our minutes, and then our denominator would be 1 hour. So our final answer is already as a unit rate. So if we were filling a pool 70 gallons per minute, it would take us 4,200 gallons per hour. Number 2, a car traveling at a rate of 60 miles per hour. How many feet per second is this? So we want to go from miles per hour to feet per second. Miles over hour, and then we want to change it to feet per second. So you can see that we need 2 conversion factors, miles to feet and hours to seconds. So our conversion factors between miles and feet is 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet. Our conversion factor for the time, 1 hour, is equal to 3,600 seconds. Start with your original, 60 miles over 1 hour, times, and we'll start by going from miles to feet. So miles is in the numerator, we want it to end up in the denominator so we can cross cancel, feet in the numerator. Fill in your number, so 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Multiply by your second conversion factor for your time. So we want to cancel out our hours, so it's in the denominator, put it in the numerator, seconds in your denominator. So fill in your numbers, 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. Cross cancel those those units to make sure we have the proper units. Miles cancels out, hours cancels out. We end up with feet per second, which we want to end up with in the end, feet per second. Now using your calculator, you're going to multiply going across. So when we multiply, we get 316,800. Put in your label, and that would be feet. Over your denominator, 1 times 1 times 3,600 to give you 3,600. Put in your label, seconds. Now see, our denominator is not 1 second, so we need to divide the numerator and denominator by 3,600. So we end up with 1 second. 3,600 divided by 3,600 is 1 second. And when we divide out the 316,800 by 3,600, we end up with 88 feet. So if a car is traveling 60 miles per hour,
it traveled 88 feet in 1 second.
Number 5, a grizzly bear runs 30 miles in 1 hour. What is the rate in feet per second? So we want to go from miles to feet and hours to seconds. Your conversion factor for miles to feet is 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet, and 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. Those are our 2 conversion factors that we're going to use. So start with your original, 30 miles over 1 hour, times it by your first conversion factor. Make sure the units cancel out. So miles goes in the denominator, feet goes in the numerator. So 1 mile is 5,280 feet, times your second conversion factor. We want to go from hours, so see how they cross cancel. It's in the denominator, put your hours in the numerator, seconds in the denominator, and 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. Using your calculator, multiply 30 times 5,280 to give you 158,400. Make sure those units cancel out. We canceled out our hours. We cancel out our miles. So this unit should be feet because we want to go from feet per second. So now in the denominator, you're going to multiply across 1 times 3,600, and we end up getting 3,600 seconds. We need to find out how many feet per second. So far right now we have 3,600 seconds. So divide your numerator and denominator by the 3,600 to get it to a unit rate. So our feet is in the numerator, our seconds is in the denominator. 3,600 divided by itself is 1, so 1 second. And when we do 158,400 divided by 3,600, we get 44 feet. So a grizzly bear can travel 30 miles in 1 hour. That means he's actually going 44 feet in 1 second. Converting systems of measurement. Complete each conversion round to the nearest hundred. So we have 12 centimeters is approximately equal to blank inches. So what we want to do is we want to figure out if we had 12 centimeters, what that would be in inches. So looking at our table, our conversions off to the side, the conversion that we're going to use for number 1 is 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So we start with our original. That over 1, and we're going to multiply it by the conversion factor. And again, we want to make sure that our units of measurement cancel. So put our centimeters in the denominators, inch in the numerator. So 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. We're going to cross out our units that are the same, which is centimeters. We're going to multiply going across, so 12 times 1 is 12 inches, and 2.54 is 2.54. We want to find out what it is as a unit rate, so we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2.54. And we get 4.724. Don't forget you can use a calculator. Rounding this to the nearest hundredth, it would be 4.72. So 12 centimeters is approximately equal to 4.72 inches, which is almost 5 inches. It's about 4 3/4 of an inch. Number 2, 6 miles is approximately equal to blank kilometers. So we start with our original. We're going to put it over 1, and we're going to multiply it by our conversion factor. So for the second one, we want miles and kilometers, and that would be the bottom one. So our miles would go in the denominator, kilometers goes in the numerator. So it would be 1.609 kilometers over 1 mile.
So our miles cancel out.
So when we multiply our numerators together, 6 times 1.609 gives you 9.654 kilometers over 1, which we can round that to the nearest hundredth, so it's 9.65. So 6 miles is approximately equal to 9.65 kilometers. Number 3, 4 quarts is approximately equal to how many liters? Using our information at the top, we want to look between quarts and liters. So that's our conversion factor right here. 1 quart is approximately equal to 0.946 liters. So start with your original, put it over 1, and multiply it by your conversion factor. Quart's going to go in the denominator, so we can cancel them out. Liters in our numerator. So 1 quart is in the denominator and 0.946 in the numerator. Cross off our quarts, so we're left with liters. Multiply going across, 3.784 over 1, and that would be liters. Round it to the nearest tenth, 3.78. So 4 quarts is approximately equal to 3.78 liters. Number 4, 12 ounces is approximately equal to how many kilograms? We start with our 12 ounces. We can put that over 1, and we want to multiply it by the conversion factor from ounces to kilograms. But if we notice over here, we don't have ounces to kilograms. We have ounces to grams. So we can use that conversion factor first, ounces to grams, but then we want to do kilograms to grams. So grams in the denominator, kilograms in the numerator. Now fill in your numbers. 1 ounce in the bottom, 28.35 grams in the numerator. The second conversion factor, 1 kilogram in the numerator and 1,000 grams in your denominator. Cross off your common units, ounces, grams, we're left with kilograms. Multiply going across, 12 times 28.35 gives you 340.2, and that is kilograms over 1,000 grams. Find the unit rate by dividing the numerator and denominator by 1,000. And we end up getting 0.3402, and that's kilograms. Round that to the nearest hundredth, so 0.34. So 12 ounces is approximately equal to 34 hundredths kilograms, or 0.34 kilograms. Complete each conversion, round to the nearest hundredth. 10 meters per minute. We want to find out how many centimeters that would be per second. So 10 meters goes in the numerator, 1 minute goes in the denominator. We can start by doing our time. We want to go from minutes to seconds. So minutes to seconds is 1 minute goes in the numerator and 60 seconds goes in the denominator. Our minutes would cancel, we're left with seconds. Then we want to go from meters to centimeters. So there's our conversion factor there. So our meters goes in the denominator, centimeters in the numerator. So 1 meter in the denominator, 100 centimeters in the numerator. Your meters cancel out. Multiply going across, so 10 times 1 times 100 is 1,000, and that would be centimeters. Over number 2, 210 kilometers per hour, and we want to know how many yards that would be per minute. Start by writing your original, putting in your units, and we want to do our conversion factors going from kilometers to yards. So we have yards in here, but it is going from yards to meters.
So we need to do an extra conversion from
kilometers to meters. So 2 conversion factors. So let's start with our kilometers. We're going from kilometers, and then it would have to be to meters. So that would be 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. When we cross off our kilometers, we're not at yards yet, we're at meters. So now this is where we use the meters in the denominator, yards in the numerator. So 1 yard is equal to 0.914 meters. Make sure our units cross out, and we have meters and meters, we end up with yards. So our next thing is hours to minutes. We want to cross cancel our hours, so that goes in our numerator and minutes in the denominator. So 1 hour is 60 minutes. Make sure our hours cancel out and we're left with minutes. So now we're left with yards in the numerator, minutes in the denominator. Multiply going across. So 210 times 1,000 times 1 to give us 210,000 over 0.914 times 60 to give us 54.84. Divide by our denominator, 54.84, to get our unit rate. So we end up getting 3,829.321. And when we round that to the nearest hundredth, we can just cross off that 1, and that gives us yards over 1 minute. So this is one way to convert right here in the middle from going from kilometers to yards. Okay, by doing 2 conversion factors. We could also use other conversion factors, and the answers will be similar in the end. Number 3, a recent Winter Olympics USA short track speed skater Apollo Ono won a gold medal by skating about 12 meters per second. Rounded to the nearest hundredth, how many miles per hour is this? We want to go from 12 meters per second, so that's 12 meters over 1 second, and we want to go to miles per hour. So our first conversion is going from meters to miles. So we have miles to kilometers, but we don't have it to meters. So now we need to use our second conversion factor, going from kilometers to meters. So multiply by your conversion factor between, we're going to do the first one, which would be kilometers to miles. And put in our units of measurement, so 1.609 kilometers, 1 mile. And then we're going to use our second one, kilometers, make sure they cross, cancel in the numerator, and then meters in the denominator. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. Let's cross cancel the units to make sure everything cross cancels. So meters cancels out, kilometers cancels out, and we're left with miles. Now we're looking at our time, seconds to hours. So seconds is in the denominator. We're going to put that in the numerator, hours in the denominator. So 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. Multiply going across. So 12 times 1 times 3,600 to give you 43,200. And our label would be, cross off those seconds, would be miles. And then our denominator would be hours, and that would be 1.609 times 1,000 to give you 1,609. Now, we don't have 1 hour yet, so we're going to have to divide the numerator and the denominator by the denominator, which would be 1,609, which gives you 28.848, which rounds to 28.85 miles over 1 hour. Again, this is just one way of doing the conversion in the middle. We could also do it other ways. For example, we could go from meters to feet and then from feet to miles. So that's just one way of doing it. And the last problem, a cheetah can run short distances at a speed of up to 75 miles per hour. How many meters per second is this? So we want to go from miles to meters, and we also want to go from hours to seconds. So we'll start by writing the original, 75 miles over 1 hour. And we'll do the time first because it's a little bit easier. So let's do our time. So hours in the numerator, seconds in the denominator. 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. Make sure those hours cancel out, and you're left with seconds. All right, so now we're going from miles to meters. If you look at the information above, we have miles to kilometers. We also have feet to meters. So let's just stick with the miles and kilometers and put our miles in the denominator, kilometers in the numerator, and then we have to convert it one more time by going from kilometers to meters. Put in our information, 1 mile on the bottom, 1.609 on the top. Kilometers on the bottom is 1 in 1,000 meters. Make sure all our common units cancel out. Miles canceled out with miles, kilometers canceled out with kilometers. You're left with meters. So multiply everything across in the numerator, 75 times 1.609 times 1,000 to give you 120,675 over 3,600, and this would be meters over second. Divide your numerator and denominator by your 3,600 seconds. And we end up getting 33.520 or 33.52 over 1. So that would be meters over seconds. Again, just like the previous problems, this section here in the middle, you could actually do it a different way by converting your miles to feet and then feet to meters. There are several ways you can do this. Your answers are going to be off by a tiny bit, but they're similar and they do convert because it's approximately equal to between our customary and our metric system. So there is a little room for error. That's the end of the notes on 5-4.